All right, well, welcome those who will be joining us via YouTube for the Morehead Church of Christ Wednesday evening Bible study. We are studying through the book of Judges, and tonight we're going to be beginning Judges chapter 11. Now, remember that beginning at Judges chapter 10, verses 6 and following, the writer of Judges reveals to us the fifth of 6 cycles of the spiritual decline and restoration of Israel, which will last until the end of Judges chapter 12. But here in Judges chapter 11, we are introduced to the man who would be the next appointed judge of Israel. He will be the 8th judge tasked with delivering Israel from 18 years of oppression at the hands of the Ammonites. With that being said, I'd like to ask if there's any volunteers to read tonight.
Sure.
Brother Brian, if you wouldn't mind reading for us verses 1 through 3.
Now Jephthah and Gilead was a mighty warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute. Gilead was the father of Jephthah, and the Gilead wife also bore him sons. And when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, You shall not have an inheritance in your father's house, for you are the son of another woman. Then Jephthah fled from his brother and lived in the land of Tob. And worthless fellows collected around Jephthah and went out with him.
All right, very good. So Jephthah is what we would say another unconventional hero of Israel. Remember sort of Gideon being, from the smallest tribe in Israel and sort of from the smallest family within that tribe. And he just seems so unlikely to be the judge of Israel. And yet God continually uses unconventional ways of accomplishing his will. And so we might think if men were involved with this process of trying to select the right hero, they'd have somebody that had more of a social standing, and maybe more prominent family, and have a lot more going for them in a lot of ways. But God's not concerned about really the aesthetics of how things are supposed to go, but he really chooses the best person for the job. And so while Jephthah, his pedigree is less than desirable since he was the son of a harlot, and as a result had a bad reputation, God is going to use him in spite of that. But before we get any further, I just want to talk a little bit about prostitution in the Old Testament. And I'm reading a quote here from Baker's Evangelical Dictionary of Biblical Theology. And it says, while the law forbids parents from forcing daughters into prostitution, there is no penalty attached. Leviticus 19:29. In one case, there is a penalty. If a woman has been betrothed to a man and he discovers that she is not a virgin, she may be stoned to death for prostituting herself. Deuteronomy 22:13 through 21. These passages lead some scholars to conclude that when two adults, neither of which was betrothed or married, consented to have sex, it was not considered a very serious crime because no sanctions were expressed. However, before the Mosaic law, burning was the penalty in one instance, Genesis 38 verse 24. Perhaps the Israelite society, like modern ones, tolerated a certain amount of prostitution, but it was clearly immoral, and the sages, or the wise men, sternly warned against it. Proverbs 23:27 and Proverbs 29 and verse 3. A harlot does not hold a socially acceptable standing in ancient society. And so Jephthah, as a son of a harlot, is an illegitimate child. In other words, the parents are not even married to each other. And so he does not have the same rights as his siblings that were his fathers and his mothers. because he is neither a child of his father's wife or of his wives or of concubines, if Gilead had concubines. The appeal that Jephthah has as the next judge of Israel, of course, is that he is a son of a prostitute. Is not that he's a son of a prostitute, which is a stigma that seemed to overshadow his life, but the fact that he was, verse 1, a valiant warrior. He was somebody who was brave and he was skilled warrior, and that's really what his success was in relation to his identity. Judges chapter 10, verses 17, 18. So I'm going to go back and read just these two verses from there. It says, Then the sons of Ammon were summoned, and they camped in Gilead, and the sons of Israel gathered together and camped in Mizpah. And the people and the leaders of Gilead said to one another, Who is the man who will begin to fight against the sons of Ammon? He shall become head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. And so the end of chapter 10 sets us up for the coming of Jephthah. The word Jephthah, or the name Jephthah, means, according to Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, God will set free. And the Gileadites that are mentioned here, according to Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, are descendants of Gilead. And Gilead is the father of Jephthah, who will be the 8th judge of Israel. Verse 2 says, Gilead's wife bore him sons, talking about Gilead, of course. And when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, You shall not have an inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. So what we see is that even though Jephthah was born to a prostitute, that child grew up in Gilead's house, his father's house, and it seemed like there wasn't any problems until they got older, and that's when the half-brothers essentially, clearly, are not essentially wanting him to stick around. And the reason is they're concerned about the inheritance of their father's house. In other words, they want to make sure that they do not have to share any of it with them, and so they drove him from his home. Now, a little bit about inheritance from an ancient Israel standpoint. This is from Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary. It says, the receipt of property as a gift or by legal right, usually upon the death of one's father. So the father owns really all the assets belong to him. Upon his death, then those assets go to his children. The real and personal property of a father was normally divided among his sons. A larger amount, usually a double portion, went to the eldest son, who assumed the care of his mother and unmarried sisters. The sons of concubines normally received presents of personal property. But because Jephthah is not one of the sons of a legitimate woman, that being a wife or a concubine, his half-brothers do not want to see him get anything. And so the best way to ensure that is to drive him out. And so, verse 3, Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob, and worthless fellows gathered themselves about Jephthah, and they went out with him. And so we can only imagine sort of the mindset of Jephthah, the idea that he's really facing outright rejection of his brothers, who see him as a threat in terms of their inheritance, and the fact that they don't really want him to have anything. And we certainly know that that would be a very painful thing for Jephthah to go through. Now I want us to notice here that it says in verse 3, and worthless fellows gathered themselves about Jephthah. You know, this is somewhat similar. We read about Abimelech. The only thing with Abimelech, when he wanted to be king, he went out and hired these people to essentially help him kill all of his 70 brothers. But unlike that, Jephthah essentially is attracting these men to them. And the idea here of a worthless fellows according to the Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew English Lexicon, means ethically worthless fellows. Somehow they're drawing to him. It doesn't say that Jephthah is going after, but they're drawing to him. And so Jephthah is kind of a misfit. These men seem to be sort of in the same boat. They're drawn to Jephthah because Jephthah is somebody who really shows himself to be a leader. And I like what the Jameson, Faust, and Brown commentary in the book of Judges says here. It says, quote, "And went out with him," that's Jephthah, "followed him as a military chief. They led a freebooting life, sustaining themselves by frequent incursions on the Ammonites and on other neighboring people in the style of Robin Hood. And it is not deemed dishonorable when the expeditions are directed against those out of his own tribe or nation." In other words, these are really enemy nations that the Israelites were supposed to destroy to begin with and had failed to do that. Jephthah had established himself as a confident military leader. And if you want to know where Tob is a land east of the Jordan River between Gilead and the Syrian desert, according to Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary. The rejection in his life, in Jephthah's life, is humbling, but here we should see something, if we're going to look at this, is that maybe we've encountered some rejection in our own life. Maybe someone has said some unpleasant things about us, say, well, you'll never amount to much, or we don't want anything to do with you, and you don't have any talents. Whatever may have been said to one another, obviously that would be painful to hear those words. But I want you to notice here that Jephthah does not seem to give in to self-pity or self-loathing and become depressed about it. Ultimately, we choose really how we are going to deal with these kind of setbacks in life, or the negative opinions of others. Will we accept the words that they say as true? Will we really accept defeat, or will we prevail in spite of the hostile words and actions of others? The encouragement here is that Jephthah, even though he received rejection and the idea of being pushed away by his brothers and their negative assessment of him, he did not spend his time feeling sorry for themselves, but he seemed to be a man of faith. He seemed to be a man that was going to be set on doing great things in spite of the fact that he met with such great rejection. In fact, if we go over to Hebrews chapter 11, let's do that. Jephthah here, this judge of Israel, is going to be mentioned by name among the faith heroes. And so we want to stop and note that at this point, because the whole point of the author of Hebrews is to make a note of those who essentially were heroes of faith. And we're going to read in Hebrews 11, starting in verse 31. Brother Brian, would you like to read 31 through 34, please?
Yep. By faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given friendly welcome to the spies. And what more shall I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, and David, and Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, but foreign armies to flight.
All right, very good. So here we see that Jephthah was somebody that the author of Hebrews thought it important to include in this list of faith heroes. We're going to move next to verses 4 through 11, so I will read that back in Judges chapter 11. And the Bible writer says, "It came about after a while that the sons of Ammon fought against Israel. And it happened when the sons of Ammon fought against Israel that the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. And they said to Jephthah, come and be our chief, that we might fight against the sons of Ammon. Then Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, did you not hate me and drive me from my father's house? So why have you come to me now when you are in trouble? The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, for this reason we have now returned to you, that you may go out with us and fight with the sons of Ammon and become head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. So Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, if you take me back to fight against the sons of Ammon, and the Lord gives them up to me, will I become your head? The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, the Lord is witness between us. Surely we will do as you have said. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and chief over them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah. So what we have here is this some kind of military action going on with the Ammonites. Obviously, they're ruling over Israel. We don't know here at this point what it's about, but as we get further into text, it seems to be a skirmish about who owns the land that these Israelites are living on. The Amplified Bible reads here in verse 4, and after a time the Ammonites made war against Israel. And just a little bit of background information about the Ammonites. Their name means kinsmen or people. And you'll recall, this is coming from Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, that Ammon was the son of Lot by his younger daughter. And he is the same person as Ben-Ami, and is described as the father or ancestor of the people of Ammon, Genesis 19 and verse 38. So we recognize that the Ammonites have supremacy over the Israelites. Remember, the Israelites have given into the practice of sin. God has allowed their enemies, various enemies, to essentially dominate them, rule over them, control them, really to make their life very hard, with the purpose of trying to restore them to the position that they should have with their God. In verse 5, it says, when the sons of Ammon fought against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to Jephthah from the land of Tob. Just a little bit about elders from an Old Testament standpoint. New Testament, we sort of have one understanding of it. The Old Testament, a little bit different. And so, again, I'm going to be reading from Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary talking about an elder. And he said, quote, the word may refer to age, experience, and authority, as well as specific leadership roles. In ancient times, authority was given to older people with wider experience. These were often considered the most qualified to hold places of leadership. So, so as we think about the idea, there's a lot of focus of the modern generations on young people, maybe because of their looks, maybe because of their youthful vigor, but the idea that there's a certain benefit of the experience of life. And in ancient cultures, they saw that, and they appointed the older people to sort of be the leaders among them. Continue on with Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary. It says, in the Old Testament, those leaders associated with Moses in governing the nation of Israel were called the elders of Israel, Exodus 3 and verse 16, 24 and verse 1. The elders of the people, Exodus 19 verse 7, or the 70 elders, Exodus 24 and verse 1. Later, after the years of the wandering in the wilderness, bodies of elders ruled each city. These elders were viewed as representatives of the nation and its people. The term elder eventually came to be applied to those who governed in local communities, the rulers of various tribes, and those who ruled all of Israel. These leaders were responsible for legal, political, and military guidance and supervision. So these are some key people. These are the people essentially leading these communities, and it's obvious that they do not feel like they're in a position to deal with the Ammonites. In other words, they have been under their oppression for 18 years. We need to get somebody who is going to be able to handle the task of really being the commander-in-chief of our forces to fight against the Ammonites. And it appears that the elders of Gilead must have been in agreement with the action taken by Jephthah's brother. In other words, they wanted Jephthah out of their community. It seems the case that the elders were also behind that. Verse 7 says, Jephthah says, "Did you not hate me and drive me from my father's house?" So they were behind it. They certainly were part of that process in sort of running them out of the community. And the situation here, as it unfolds, must have been dire for these elders of Gilead to say, you know, the guy that could help us, that valiant warrior guy, that guy Jephthah, the guy that essentially we kicked out of our community, we need to pay him a visit and see if not only he will sort of come and fight for us, but he essentially be the leader of us all. And so we can only imagine the challenge of that, and maybe the challenge of swallowing their pride became easier knowing that they didn't have a chance if they didn't have the right leader to help them fight against the Ammonites. In verse 6, it's talking about the elders. So they said to Jephthah, "Come and be our chief, that we may fight against the son of Ammon." In other words, we don't have confidence in anybody else. All we know is that we have a chance with you. So we want you to come and essentially be our chief. And the Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew English Lexicon defines this word as a chief ruler or a commander in war. And so the elders of Jephthah not only asked for Jephthah's help to fight for Israel against the Ammonites, but the idea that we want you to be the lead man, the chief man, sort of taking our troops into battle. Verse 7 says, "Then Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, 'Did you not hate me and drive me from my father's house? So why have you come to me now when you are in trouble?'" You think he has a legitimate gripe there? He certainly does, because he's essentially questioning the elders. In other words, you know, there was a time when you essentially wanted me out, said, "Good riddance, don't come back, we don't want you here." Isn't it a funny thing that here you are? You didn't want me, now you want me. Why do you want me? Oh, because you're in trouble. And the idea is he's talking about the situation with the army of the Ammonites. They are not in a good position to fight against them. And so we recognize Jephthah could do this. And so Jephthah is like, "I see you only want me because you want what I can do for you. You want me to help you." And it seems like a sad state of affairs. That the idea is that, you know, they didn't see the need for him before that, but they're here now, and they're asking him to come on board in their military there. In verse 8 it says, "The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, 'For this reason we have now returned to you, that you may go with us and fight with the sons of Ammon and become head over all the inhabitants of Gilead.'" The idea of head there, that's the New American Standard. Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew English Lexicon defines it as a chief man. And the reason they came to Jephthah, the person is to persuade him. In other words, if they sent a messenger saying, "Jephthah, come running, we need your help, we'll come fight this battle for us," they didn't believe probably that they could be as successful as sort of getting him on board. They felt like we need to go in person and we can persuade him to fight for the sons of Israel against Ammon. And it seems that the added incentive would be that he would then be deemed the ruler over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Now, if you understand where Gilead is, you got to remember that in Palestine there is the Jordan River, and you have an area on the west side, which is really what would have been the promised land, and then you have the part on the east side, and that is occupied by West Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben. That area there sort of became known as Gilead. Even though Jephthah's father was named Gilead, this area was named Gilead as well. And so verse 9, Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, here's sort of condition right here, if you take me back to fight against the sons of Ammon, and the Lord gives them up to me, will I become your head? Here's the concern that Jephthah has. So let's say that I go along with you, and I be the commander-in-chief and head over all of you, rule over all of you. What happens when the battle is over? Am I still going to be your chief? Am I still going to rule over you? This is his concern. The idea is once you get from me what you want, will I still be a ruler at the end of the day? And verse 10 says, the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, the Lord is witness between us. Surely we will do as you have said. And so the elders of Gilead assured Jephthah that he would remain a ruler even after the Ammonites were conquered. And we know that they were sincere in that because they took a vow before God promising Jephthah that that would be the case. Verse 11, it says, then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and chief over them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah. Mizpah is a city located in the territory of Gad. Remember, that would be the area of Gilead. It's on the eastern side of the Jordan River. And I like what Bob Winton in his commentary, an outline commentary of Judges, had to say at this verse. He said, quote, Jephthah returned with the elders to Mizpah, where he repeated the words of the agreement before the Lord. This confirmed the covenant in God's sight and brought it to the attention of the people who may not have been privy to the purpose of the elders' visit with them at Tob. His purpose was to make the appointment official by. In other words, he didn't want to make sure that, these elders came to him and said, yeah, okay, we'll give you whatever you want, just come fight this battle, and then it's over. And the elders say, oh, okay, I'm your ruler now. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. And so the idea that this would be a point for all of the people to realize before God, with the elders present, what the circumstance was now going to be, that he would be the ruler of the Israelite people. Okay, any questions? All right. We're going to go on to verses 12 through 28. So, Brian, would you like to read 12 through 19?
Okay.
I'll read the rest of it.
Then Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said, what do you have against me that you have come to me to fight against my land? And the king of the Ammonites answered the messengers of Jephthah, because Israel, on coming up from Egypt, took away my land from the Arnon of the Jabbok, and the Jordan. Now therefore restore it peaceably. Jephthah again sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites and said to him, thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites, but when they came up from Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and came to the Kadesh. Israel then sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, please let us pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not listen.
Okay, through 19.
Okay. And they sent also to the king of Moab, but we would not consent, so Israel remained at Kadesh. Then they journeyed through the wilderness and went around the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and arrived on the east side of the land of Moab, and camped on the other side of Arnon. But they did not enter the territory of Moab. From the Arnon was the boundary of Moab. Israel then sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Ammonites, king of Heshbon, and Israel said to him, please let us pass through your land to our country.
All right. Verse 20. But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory, so Sihon gathered all his people and camped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. The Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they defeated them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country. So they possessed all the territory of the Amorites, from the Arnon as far as the Jabbok, and from the wilderness as far as Jordan. Since now the Lord, the God of Israel, drove out the Amorites from before his people Israel, are you then to possess it? Do you not possess what Chemosh your God gives to you to possess? So whatever the Lord our God has driven out before us, we will possess it. Now, are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive with Israel, or did he ever fight against them? While Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and in Ar and its villages, and in all the cities that are on the banks of the Arnon, 300 years, why did you not recover them within that time? I therefore have not sinned against you, but you are doing me wrong by making war against me. May the Lord, the judge today between the sons of Israel and the sons of Ammon. But the king of the sons of Ammon disregarded the message which Jephthah sent to him. So what we have here is a man that we're talking about, Jephthah, that seems to be very wise in his approach. In other words, I'd say, grab your spears, your swords, grab all your military gear, we're going to go fight these guys. It seems like he wants to have a more diplomatic approach. And we're going to send formal communication from our messengers to the king here and really appeal to his sense of honesty and fairness and sort of what's just here. And so this is exactly what Jephthah does, because he seems to want to bring about a more peaceful solution. Verse 13, it says, the king of the sons of Ammon said to the messengers of Jephthah, verse 12, I didn't read again. It says, now Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the sons of Ammon, saying, what is between you and me that you have come to fight against my land? In other words, why are you wanting to fight? What is it that you're wanting to do here? Verse 13, the kings of the sons of Ammon said to the messengers of Jephthah, because Israel took away my land when they came up from Egypt, from the Arnon as far as the Jabbok and the Jordan, therefore return them peaceably now. In other words, they're saying, you know what, this has been our land, and what's happened is you Israelites, when you came out of Egypt, he's really talking about when they were under slavery, they came through the wilderness, the idea they came from Egypt, and they showed up there. He's accusing them of wrongfully taking away their land. And the Arnon here is a river, and the Jabbok is a river here. So the Arnon is, according to Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, a swift river that runs through the mountains of the Transjordan, empties in the Dead Sea. It serves as a boundary between Moab and the Amorites. Numbers 21, verse 13, the tribes of Israel and the tribe of Reuben, Joshua 13, verse 16. It is, through the rugged sandstone ravine that rises more than 1,650 feet above the river. The Jabbok here, Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, says one of the main eastern tributaries of the Jordan River. It says the stream rose in Transjordan in the hills of Bashan near Rabbah of the Ammonites, and entered the Jordan about 15 miles north of the Dead Sea. And so what we see here is that the Ammonite is saying, we're here because you have done us wrong. You have taken land that belongs to us. You came from Egypt and you took away our land. And so he contends that this is really the problem here. And what he is saying is, give us back what rightly belongs to us, and that will sort of avert the battle that will unfold. Well, Jephthah, verse 14, will send messengers to the sons, again to the king of the sons of Ammon. The idea is I'm going to explain to you how we got this land. I'm going to give you a history lesson that you obviously are not aware of in terms of how we became the rightful owners of this land. And so that's what we're going to read here in the next few verses. Jephthah is very wise, and he obviously believes that if he can reason with this king, this is better than taking everybody to war. The king will just simply leave them alone. Verse 15, it says, and they said to him, that is the king of the sons of Ammon, verse 14, thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab or the land of the sons of Ammon. So we're talking about that land that became known as Gilead. So on that side of the eastern side of the Jordan River, you have Moab, and you have Ammon on that side. And Jephthah is saying Israel did not steal anybody's land. Okay, verse 16, for when they came from Egypt, talking about the Israelites, and Israel went through the wilderness of the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. Kadesh is also known as Kadesh Barnea, according to Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary. It is a wilderness region between Egypt and the land of Canaan where the Hebrew people camped during the Exodus. So essentially they travel across the wilderness, they get really in place, and this seems the point in which they want to go into the promised land. Instead of going up on the western side of the promised land, we don't know exactly what it was to why they did not want to go up on the western side. Some kind of setback, some kind of issue, some kind of good reason that's not explained in the scriptures as to why they wanted to go over on the eastern side, go up and essentially cut across into the Jordan River into the promised land. So what Jephthah is doing now is sort of explaining their action here, so that history of Israel in terms of getting how they came to get the land that the Ammonites are claiming theirs. Verse 17, it says, then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom. So this is a past event. Joshua took them into the promised land. They conquered all that area. And this is, the time of Judges is after all this has happened. So we're backing up in history, right, and looking at what happened historically. Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, verse 17, saying, please let us pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not listen. And they also sent to the king of Moab, this talking about the Israelites sending to them, essentially asking him the same question, but it says he would not consent, so Israel remained at Kadesh. In other words, they asked both of these kings, hey, can we cut through your territory? We won't take anything that doesn't belong to us. If we, take some of your food or whatever, we'll make it right with you. But essentially, we just want to cut across your territory. Both of these kings refused. Verse 18, the Bible writer says, then they went, about the Israelites, went through the wilderness and around to the land of Egypt. In other words, they went, traveled south around the territory of Edom until they eventually went east and came to the eastern side of the territorial boundary of Moab, and they camped there. So they were not in the territory of Moab, but they were nearby. Verse 19, Jephthah continues in his message. He says, and Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon. And Israel said to him, please let us pass through your land to our place. So these are the two kings wouldn't let him do them. And now he's appealing to the king, Sihon, king of the Amorites. All they want to do is cut across, go across the Jordan River, and enter into the promised land God had given them. Heshbon is actually the former capital of Sihon, king of the Amorites, about 50 miles east of Jerusalem. And it is located within this area, area of land that's being disputed by the king of the Ammonites. The promised land of Israel was on the western side of the Jordan River, as I said. Israel was only looking to pass through Edom, Moab, or the Amorite territories in order to get to the promised land. All of these other nations refused to do that. But here's what Jephthah says. When they got next to Edom here, he says in verse 20, but Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory, so Sihon gathered all his people and camped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. Jahaz is a city in the wastelands of Moab. I think I said Edom, it's be Moab, where Sihon, king of the Amorites, was. And so we're talking about this place. So Sihon essentially not only will not let the Israelites go from east to west into the promised land, but he considers them so much of a threat that he says we've got to do something about this militarily. And so he gathers his people, his army, and he fought with Israel. Verse 21, Jephthah continues, he says, the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they defeated them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country. In other words, because God was with his people, it didn't matter how much of an army that Sihon had. God had promised to give them this land on the western side of the Jordan River, and if this is what it was going to take to get them over there, God was certainly going to help them in that regard. I want you to notice that the Israelites did not provoke this attack. They didn't say, okay, because you didn't let us go through here, we're going to forcibly attack you so that we can get there. This attack was led by Sihon against the king there, against the people of Israel. Verse 22, or verse 21, the Lord, verse 22, so they possessed all the territory of the Amorites from the Arnon as far as the Jabbok. So we're talking about two rivers that run from east to west, and they're really the boundaries of this disputed territory that the Ammonite king is talking about. Essentially, God gave them the power to conquer the Amorites, and when they defeat them, that's how Israel came in possession of this land. So Israel got this land because they defeated the Amorites that had it before you guys eventually got here. And let's just go on to verse 23 here. It says, since now the Lord, this is Jephthah speaking, since now the Lord, the God of Israel, drove out the Amorites from before his people Israel, are you to possess it? Okay, so he's asking a question here, and that is that first of all, you understand that it's never been your land. If Israel essentially conquers another people called the Amorites, and they take the possession from them, they're the one that provoked the attack, they didn't want it, they responded, then defeat them, then the land is theirs by right because they conquered these people, and they did not take it away from you because you were not the ones that they conquered and took it away from. So a little bit about the Ammon and the Ammonites from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia says, their dwelling place was on the east side of the Dead Sea, the Jordan River, between the Arnon and Jabbok. But before the advance of the Hebrews, they had been dispossessed of a portion of their land by the Amorites, who founded along the east side of the Jordan and the Dead Sea, the king of Sihon. And so they need to realize, the king of Ammon realized there's no land stealing that's gone on our part. Essentially, you're making a baseless claim against us that's not true. In verse 24, Jephthah continues in his message to the king of Ammon. He says, do you not possess what Shemesh your God gives you to possess? So whatever the Lord our God has driven out before us, we will possess. So his point, Shemesh, you have to know, is a pagan god. Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary says is the national god of the Moabites and the Ammonites. Chemosh has been identified with Baal of Peor, Baal Zebub, Mars and Saturn as the star of ill omen. At Dibon, a town in Moab north of the river Arnon, was the chief seat of its worship. Like Moloch, Chemosh was worshipped by the sacrifice of children as burnt offerings. I mean, you can't get any more barbaric than that. The idea they offer their own children in sacrificing to this particular pagan god. What's Jephthah's point with verse 24? He's essentially asked the king of the Ammonites via the messenger this question: who is responsible for the land that each one of us possess? And his point is, it is the God we serve. So you guys, you Ammonites, have what you have as far as the territory you occupy because your God Chemosh gave you that. And we Israelites have the territory we occupy because the Lord our God gave it to us. That seems like this guy really knows how to reach out to the king and really try to get him to think about what he's doing. In other words, you know what? Your accusations are false. And you need to consider that this is the historical aspect of how we got this land. You need to understand also that if your God wanted you to have this land, you would have it. All right, verse 25, Jephthah continues, now are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive with Israel, or did he ever fight against him? Zippor is the father of Balak, and Balak, according to Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, is the king of Moab near the end of the wilderness wandings of the Israelites. And so he's a king there. And what he's trying to present here, Jephthah, is he makes an argument here in the defense of Israel occupying this land that is being disputed belonging to Israel, okay, by the Ammonites. The argument is this, that Balak, the king of Moab, did not make any efforts to obtain the land that now is in dispute, is being disputed by the king of the Ammonites. The point being is that since Balak never laid claim to the land way back then, when Israel occupied, why are you now laying claim to this land? Since the king of Moab did not lay claim to this land, the point is, neither should you. He never laid claim to it. You shouldn't be doing that either, okay? Moab, by the way, is, according to Nelson's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, is a son of Lot by an incestuous union with his older daughter, Genesis 19:37, and Moab became an ancestor of the Moabites. Verse 26. Jephthah continues, says, while Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and in Er and its villages, and all the cities that were on the banks of the Arnon 300 years, why did you not recover them within that time? So these places, he's talking about Heshbon and Arnon, these villages, all these places are there on the banks of the Arnon River in this disputed area. And his question really is why have you guys never recovered them? In other words, 300 years have gone by and we have not heard one peep from you that this is some kind of land that belongs to you. What have you been waiting for? You've had all of this time and nothing's been said. All this time has passed by. And now you're going to lay claim to this land? And really it seems that the real motivation of the king of the Ammonites is because he has a sizable force and he believes he has the power to take it. It is only really thrown out as an excuse or justification to attack the Israelites, to take that land away by force. Verse 27. Jephthah says, I therefore have not sinned against you, but you are doing me wrong by making war against me. May the Lord, the judge today between the sons of Israel and the sons of Ammon. In other words, he's turned the whole thing around and saying, you know what, king of Ammon, you're the bad guy here, not us, okay? Jephthah sets the record straight here that Israel has not sinned in any part in relation to receiving this land. They are not at fault in one bit. The reality is that the king of the Ammonite is the one who seems to be making false allegations. And as far as Jephthah is concerned, he's going to leave the whole matter to the Lord. In other words, the Lord is going to settle this. If we are somehow in the wrong, it's going to be in the Lord's hands, and he is going to settle this dispute about this land. Finally, verse 28 says, "But the king of the sons of Ammon disregarded the message which Jephthah sent him." Even we see here that the idea is the king of the Ammonites doesn't dispute anything that Jephthah said. Jephthah set forth some pretty good arguments there. The idea is sometimes you have people in life that they don't want to hear what you have to say, and they want to do whatever they're planning to do. And so even though the king of the Ammonites never disputes anything that Jephthah says, he is not going to heed the message, which means there's going to be a battle that is going to take place. I think as far as tonight, when we look at sort of the lesson, we should recognize Jephthah is a man that had some setbacks in life. He was born to a prostitute, and you know what? He didn't receive the acceptable position among his family, and at some point he was cast out. But you know what? He didn't get discouraged about that. He doesn't go into self-pity and say, why me? He seems to have said, in spite of the fact that he had this setback in life, he essentially rose up. He became somebody notable, somebody that was a valiant warrior, and somebody ultimately that would be chosen by God to be the next judge of Israel. With that, well, thank you for tuning in and catching the lesson tonight. God bless you. A week from now, we plan to have another video.